Good wishes to all of you. Fundamentals of Human Geography, textbook for class 12, Unit 3, Chapter 9, International Trade. Take a look at this image. Take a look at this figure 9.1. Two women practicing barter system in John Bale Mela. You are already familiar with the term trade as a territorial activity which you have studied in Chapter 7 of this book. You know that trade means the voluntary exchange of goods and services. Two parties are required to trade. One person sells and the other purchases. In certain places, people barter their goods. For both the parties, trade is mutually beneficial. Trade may be conducted at two levels, international and national. International trade is the exchange of goods and services among countries across national boundaries. Countries need to trade to obtain commodities they cannot produce themselves or they can purchase elsewhere at a low price. The interior form of trade in primitive societies was the barter system, where direct exchange of goods take place. In, the, in this system, if you were a potter or were made or were and were in need of a plumber, you would have to look for a plumber who would be in needs of pots, and you could exchange your pots for his plumbing service. Every January after the harvest season, Jaunbil Mela takes place in Jagi Road, 35 kilometers away from Guwahati, and it is possibly the only fair in India where barter system is still alive. A big market is organized during this fair, and people from various tribes and communities exchange their products. The difficulties of barter system were overcome by the introduction of money. In the olden times, before paper and coin currency came into being, rare objects with very high intrinsic value served as money, like flintstones, obsidian, cowrie shells, tiger's paws, whale's teeth, dog's teeth, skins, furs, cattle, rice, peppercorns, salt, small tools, copper, silver, and gold. Do you know the word salary comes from the Latin word salarium, which means payment by salt, as in those times producing salt from sea water was unknown and could only be made from rock salt, which was rare and expensive. That is why it became a mode of payment. History of international trade. In ancient times, transporting goods over long distances was risky, hence trade was restricted to local markets. People then spent most of their resources on basic necessities, food and clothes. Only the rich people bought jewelry, costly dresses, and this resulted in trade of all luxury items. The Silk Road is an early example of long distance trade connecting Rome to China. Along the 6,000 kilometers road, the traders transported Chinese silk, Roman wool, and precious metals and many other high valued commodities from intermediate points in India, Persia, and Central Asia. After the disintegration of the Rome Empire, European commerce grew during 12th and 13th century with the development of ocean-going warships. Trade between Europe and Asia grew and the Americas was discovered. 15th century onwards, the European colonialism began, and along with the trade of exotic commodities, a new form of trade emerged which was called slave trade. The Portuguese, Dutch, Spaniards, and British captured African natives and forcefully transported them to the newly discovered Americas for their labor in the plantations. Slave trade was a lucrative business for more than 200 years till it was abolished in Denmark in 1792, Great Britain in 1807, and United States in 1808. Take a look at figure 9.2, advertisement for slave auction 1829, to be sold and let by public auction on Monday the 18th of May 1829. These American slave auction advertised slaves for sale or temporary hire by their owners. Buyers often paid as much as 2,000 for a skilled, healthy slave. Such auctions often separated family members from one another, many of whom never saw their loved ones again. After the Industrial Revolution, the demand for raw materials like grains, meat, wool also expanded, but their monetary value declined in relation to the manufactured goods. The industrialized nations imported primary products as raw materials and exported the value added finished products back to the non industrialized nations. In the later half of the 19th century, regions producing primary goods were no more important, and industrial nations became each other's principal customers. During the World War I and II, countries imposed trade taxes and quantitative restrictions for the first time. During the post war period, organizations like General Agreement for Tariffs and Trade, which later became the World Trade Organization, helped in reducing tariff. Why does international trade exist? International trade is the result of specialization in production. It benefits the world economy if different countries practice a specialization and division of labor in the production of commodities or provision of services. Each kind of specialization can give rise to trade. Thus, international trade is based on the principle of comparative advantage, complementary, and transferability of goods and services, and in principle should be mutually beneficial to the trading partners. In modern times, trade is the basic of the world's economic organization and is related to the foreign policy of nations. With well developed transportation and communication systems, no country is willing to forego the benefits derived from participation in international trade. Basis of international trade: difference in national resources. The world's national resources are unevenly distributed because of differences in their physical makeup, that is, geology, relief, soil, and climate. Geological structure: it determines the mineral resources based on topographical differences ensure diversity of crops and animals raised. Lowlands have greater agriculture potential. Mountains attract tourists and promote tourism. Mineral resources: they are unevenly distributed the world over. The availability of mineral resources provides the basis for industrial development. Climate: it influences the type of flora and fauna that can survive in a given region. It also ensures diversity in the range of various products. Example: wool production can take place in cold regions, bananas, rubber, and cocoa can grow in tropical regions. Population factors: the size, distribution, and diversity of people between countries affect the type and volume of goods traded. Cultural factors: distinctive forms of art and craft develop in certain cultures which are valued the world over. Example: China produces the finest porcelains and brocades. Carpets of Iran are famous, while North African leatherwork and Indonesian batik cloth are prized handicrafts. Size of population: densely populated countries have large volume of internal trade but little external trade because most of the agriculture and industrial production is consumed in the local markets. Standard of living of the population determines the demand for better quality imported products because with a low standard of living only a few people can afford to buy costly imported goods. Stage of economic development: at different stages of economic development of countries, the nature of items traded undergo changes. In agriculturally important countries, agro products are exchanged for manufactured goods, whereas industrialized nations export machinery and finished products and import food grains and other raw materials. Extent of foreign investment: foreign investment can boost trade in developing countries which lack in capital required for the development of mining, oil drilling, heavy engineering, lumbering, and plantation agriculture. By developing such capital intensive industries in developing countries, the industrial nations ensure import of foodstuffs, minerals, and create markets for their finished products. This entire cycle steps up the volume of trade between nations. Transport: in olden times, lack of advocate and efficient means of transport restricted trade to local areas. Only high value items, example gems, silk, and spices, were traded over long distances. With expansion of rail, ocean, and air transport, better means of refrigeration and preservation, trade has experienced spatial expansion. Import aspects of international trade. International trade has three very important aspects. There are volume, sectoral composition, and direction of trade. Volume of trade: the actual tonnage of goods traded makes up the volume. However, services traded cannot be measured in tonnage. Therefore, the total value of goods and services traded is considered to be the volume of trade. Table 9.1 shows that the total volume of world trade has been steadily rising over the past decades. Activity. Why do you think that the volume of trade has increased over the decades? Can these figures be compared what has been the growth in the year 2015 over the year 1955? Take a look at table 9.1 world imports and exports in millions of US dollars. 1955, 1965, okay. 1985, 1995, 2005, 2015. Exports total merchandise. Imports total merchandise. 1955, 95,000, 99,000. 1965, 1,90,000, 1,99,000. 1975, 87,000, sorry, 8,77,000. 9,12,000. 1985, 1,95,000, sorry, 19,54,000. 20,15,000. 1995, 51,62,000. 52,92,000. 2005, 1 crore 3,93,000. 1 crore 7,53,000. 2015, 1 crore 55 lakh 83,232. 1 crore 56 lakh 28,204. Total merchandise, fuels and mining products, manufactured goods, agriculture products. Take a look at figure 9.1 world merchandise exports 2005 to 15. Composition of trade. The nature of goods and services imported and exported by countries have undergone changes during the last century. Trade of primary products was dominant in the beginning of the last century. Later, manufactured goods gained prominence and currently, though the manufacturing sector commands the bulk of the global trading. Global trade. Service sector, which includes travel, transportation and other commercial services, have been showing an upward trend. Table 9.1 shows that the volume of imports and exports of the world merchandise has been growing consistently over the years. Looking at figure 9.1, it becomes evident that manufactured goods contributed to the bulk of world merchandise exports from 2005 to 2015. Fuels and mining goods and agriculture goods are also important contributors of merchandise exports. There is change in the share of continents in the world merchandise trade as Europe's contribution is declining while the contribution of Asian countries is growing. Direction of trade. Historically, the developing countries of the present used to export valuable goods and artifacts, etc., which were exported to European countries. During the 19th century, there was a reversal in the direction of trade. European countries started exporting manufacturing goods for exchange of foodstuffs and raw materials from their colonies. Europe and USA emerged as major trade partners in the world and were leaders in the trade of manufactured goods. Japan at that time was also the third important trading country. The world trade pattern underwent a drastic change during the second half of the 20th century. Europe lost its colonies while India, China, and other developing countries started competing with the developed countries. The nature of the goods traded has also changed. Balance of trade. Balance of trade records the volume of goods and services imported as well as exported by a country to other countries. If the value of import is more than the value of a country's exports, the country has a negative or unfavorable balance of trade. If the value of export is more than the value of imports, then the country has a positive or favorable balance of trade. Balance of trade and balance of payments have serious implications for a country's economy. A negative balance would mean that the country spend more on buying goods than it can earn by selling its goods. This would ultimately lead to exhaustion of its financial reserves. Types of international trade. International trade may be categorized into two types. Bilateral trade. Bilateral trade is done by two countries with each other. They enter into agreement to trade specified commodities amongst them. For example, country A may agree to trade some raw material with agreement to purchase some other specified items to country B or vice versa. Multilateral trade, as the term suggests, multilateral trade is conducted with many trading countries. The same country can trade with a number of other countries. The country may also grant the status of the most favored nation (MFN) on some of the trading partners. Case for free trade. The act of opening up economies for trading is known as free trader trade or trade liberalization. This is done by bringing down trade barriers like tariffs. Trade liberalization allows goods and services from everywhere to compete with domestic products and services. Globalization, along with free trade, can adversely affect the economies of developing countries by not giving equal playfield, playing field by imposing conditions which are unfavorable. With the development of transport and communication systems, goods and services can travel faster and farther than ever before. But free trade should not only let rich countries enter the markets, but allow the developed countries to keep their own markets protected from foreign products. Countries also need to be cautious about dumped goods as long as along with free trade dumped goods of cheaper prices can harm the domestic producers. Dumping. The practice of selling a commodity in two countries at a price that differs for reasons not related to cost is called dumping. Panel to study anti-dumping duty on shrimp. The US Act has seriously hit India's export to that country as US is the second largest importer of marine products from India. George Joseph. Upholding India and Thailand request, World Trade Organization WTO has constituted a panel to examine the anti-dumping duty and customs bond imposed by the US government against the import shrimp from these countries. The dispute settlements body of WTO has resolved to appoint the panel so that several rounds of discussion with these countries were few aliens SSA, an organization of local shrimp manufacturers. The US Act has seriously hit India's export to that country as the US is the second largest importer of marine products from India. The duty was also imposed against a host of other countries like Thailand, China, Brazil, Ecuador, and Vietnam in July 2004. US Customs had also imposed continuous bond requirement on importers of certain frozen warm winter shrimp from these countries. Activity. Think of some reasons why dumping is becoming a serious concern among trading nations. World Trade Organization. In 1948, to liberalize the world from high customs, tariffs, and various other types of restrictions, General Agreement for Tariffs and Trade GATT was formed by some countries in 1994. It was decided by the member countries to set up a permanent institutions for looking after the promotion of free and fair trade among us national, and the GATT was transformed into the World Trade Organization from 1st January 1995. WTO is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between nations. It sets the rules for the global trading system and resolves disputes between its member nations. WTO also covers trade in services such as telecommunication and banking, and others issues such as intellectual rights. The WTO has, however, been criticized and opposed by those who are worried about the effects of free trade and economic globalization. It is argued that free trade does not make ordinary people's lives more prosperous. It is actually widening the gulf between rich and poor by making rich countries more rich. This is because the influential nations in the WTO focus on their own commercial interests. Moreover, many developed countries have not fully opened their markets to products from developing countries. It is also argued that issues of health, workers' rights, child labor, and environment are ignored. Do you know WTO headquarters are located in Geneva, Switzerland? 164 countries were members of WTO as on December 2016. India has been one of the founder members of WTO. Regional trade blocs. Regional trade blocs have come up in order to encourage trade between countries with geographical proximity, similarity, and complementarities in trading items and to curb restrictions on trade of the developing world. Today, 120 regional trade blocs generate 52% of the world trade. These trading blocs developed as they responsible to the failure of the global organizations to speed up intra-regional trade. Though these regions blocs remove trade tariffs within the member nations and encourage free trade. In the future, it could get increasingly difficult to free trade to take place between different trading blocs. Some major regional trade blocs have been listed in Table 9.3. Take a look at Table 9.3 Major Regional Trade. Regional blocs, headquarters, member nations, origin, commodities, other areas of cooperation. Asian Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Jakarta, Indonesia. Brunei, Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. August 1967. Agro products, rubber, palm oil, rice, copra, coffee minerals, copper, coal, nickel, and tungsten, energy, petroleum, and natural gas and software products. Accelerate economic growth, cultural development, peace, and regional stability. CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States, Minsk, Belarus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. Commodities, crude oil, natural gas, gold, cotton, fiber, aluminium. Integration and cooperation on matters of economics, defense, and foreign policy. EU, European Union, Brussels, Belgium, Australia, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Netherlands, and United Kingdom. EEC, March 1957, EU, February 1992, 1960. Agro products, minerals, chemicals, wood, paper, transport, vehicles, optical instruments, clocks, works of arts, antiques. Single market with single currency. Latin American Integration Association. Montevideo, Uruguay, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela 1994. NAFTA, North American Free Trade Association, USA, Canada, and Mexico 1949. Agro products, motor vehicles, automotive parts, computers, textiles. OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Vienna, Austria. Algeria, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Venezuela. Crude petroleum, coordinating and unify petroleum policies. SEFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement, Bangladesh, Maldives, Bhutan, Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Jan 2016. Reduced tariffs on inter-regional trade. Concerns related to international trade. Undertaking international trade is mutually beneficial to nations if it leads to regional specialization, higher level of production, better standard of living, worldwide availability of goods and services, equalization of prices and wages, and diffusion of knowledge and culture. International trade can provide to be detrimental to nations if it leads to dependence on other countries, uneven levels of development, exploitation, and commercial rivalry, leading to wars. Global trade affects many aspects of life. It can impact everything from the environment to health and well-being of the people around the world. As countries compete to trade more, production and the use of natural resources spiral up. Resources get used faster than they can be replenished. As a result, marine life is also depleting fast. Forests are being cut down and river basins sold off to private drinking water companies. Multinational corporations trading in oil, gas mining, pharmatechs, and agribusiness keep expanding their operations at all costs, creating more population. Their mode of work does not follow the norms of sustainable development. If organizations are geared only towards profit making and environmental and health concerns are not addressed, then it could lead to serious implications in the future. Gateways of international trade ports. The chief gateways of the world of international trade are the harbors and ports. Cargoes and travelers pass from one part of the world to another through these ports. The ports provide facilities of docking, loading, unloading, and the storage facilities for cargo. In order to provide these facilities, the port authorities make arrangements for maintaining navigable channels, arranging tugs and barges, and providing labor and managerial services. The importance of a port is judged by the size of cargo and the number of ships handled. The quantity of cargo handled by a port is an indicator of the level of development of its hinterland. Take a look at figure 9.5. San Francisco, the largest land-locked harbor in the world. Types of ports. Generally, ports are classified according to the types of traffic which they handle. Types of port according to cargo handled. Industrial ports. These ports specialize in bulk cargo like grain, sugar, ore, oil, chemicals, and similar materials. Commercial ports. These ports handle general cargo, packaged products, and manufactured goods. These ports also handle passenger traffic. Take a look at figure 9.6. Leningrad Commercial Port. Comprehensive ports. Such ports handle bulk and general cargo in large volumes. Most of the world's great ports are classified as comprehensive ports. Types of port on the basis of location. Inland ports. These ports are located away from the sea coast. They are linked to the sea through a river or a canal. Such ports are accessible to flat bottom ships or barges. For example, Manchester is linked with a canal. Memphis is located on the river Mississippi. Rennes has several ports like Manthiam and Duisburg, and Kolkata is located on the river Hooghly, a branch of the river Ganga. Outports. These are deep water ports built away from the actual ports. These serve the parent ports by receiving those ships which are unable to approach them due to their large size. Classic combination, for example, is Athens and its outport Parakou's in Greece. Types of port on the basis of specialized functions. Oil ports. These ports deal in the processing and shipping of oil. Some of these are tanker ports and some are refinery ports. Maracaibo in Venezuela, Eskira in Tunisia, Tripoli in Lebanon are tanker ports. Abandon on the Gulf of Persia is a refinery port. Ports of call. These are the ports which originally developed as calling points on main sea routes where ships use it to anchor for refueling, watering, and taking food items. Later on, they developed into commercial ports. Aden, Honolulu, and Singapore are good examples. Packet stations. These are also known as the ferry ports. These package stations are exclusively concerned with the transportation of passengers and mail across water bodies covering short distances. These stations occur in pairs located in such a way that they face each other across the water body. Example Dover in England and Calais is France across the English Channel. Entrepot ports. These are collections centers where the goods are brought from different countries for export. Singapore is an entrepot for Asia, Rotterdam for Europe, and Copenhagen for the Baltic region. Naval ports. These are ports which have only strategic importance. These ports serve war, warships and have repair workshops for them. Kochi and Karwar are examples of such ports in India. Choose the right answer from the four alternatives given below. Most of the world's great ports are classified as naval ports, oil ports, comprehensive ports, industrial ports. Which one of the following continents has the maximum flow of global trade? Asia, North America, Europe, Africa. Which one of the following South American nation is a part of OPEC? Brazil, Chile, Venezuela, Peru. In which of the following trade blocs is India an associate member? SAFTA, OECD, ASEAN, OPEC. Answer the following questions in about 30 words. What is the basic function of the World Trade Organization? Why is it detrimental for the nation to have negative balance of payments? What benefits do nations get by forming trade blocs? Answer the following questions in not more than 150 words. How are ports helpful for trade? Give a classification of ports on the basis of their location. How do nations gain from international trade? Thank you.